All right, and welcome back to the Midnight Magic Musings channel. I am still your humble host, the Lord Cephas. This is episode 29 of Midnight Magic Musings, and this week we are joined once again by the man of the hour, the Tower of Power, the man too sweet to be sour. Broken Ansible has made his triumphant return. Broken Ansible, how are you today?
Winners win.
I've heard that winners win. I don't win enough in life to really understand, but I've heard that statement. As those who witnessed his beatdowns of me last weekend would understand why I don't understand the concept of winners win. I hear it, I just don't get to participate in it as a general rule. Thank you for burying me 5 seconds into our shared program. I appreciate that. All right. Well, we have a lot to get to this week. I guess the first thing to cover is we got Ahsoka Episode 3, Time to Fly, aired this week on Disney+. A relatively short episode, only about 36 minutes. Not super long. Do you want to go ahead and give your thoughts on Episode 3 of the Ahsoka series?
Very short. Really wish it was longer. And I will have to say it's still it's on the right path. I do enjoy it still. I think Ahsoka opened up as a character a little bit more. She smiled, right? I like all the characters. I like where they're going. And I really dislike the shortened runtime. There needed to be about 20 more minutes to this to let it cook a little bit more. But what was there was really good. They're already out. I think it's outperforming what a Star Wars show or performance needs to be in space, on the ground, character close-ups than the Disney trilogy could ever hope for.
So it's interesting because I wanted to get your take on a few things. One is I'm always happy to see space battles because to me Star Wars, on the big screen at least, is supposed to be a sprawling story in space, and to get to see the space fight, I thought was like, yes, this is Star Wars, plus the lightsabers, plus the laser pistols and all of that. I think it's all three. Now, to me, it's been a bit of a slow burn for the first few episodes. I believe they have 10 episodes, I believe, for season 1, and I trust there'll probably be a season 2, depending on how well it's received. How are you with the slow burn? Are you okay with that? Do you feel like they've not moved quickly enough, or it's on the path it needs to be, at least for now?
I don't mind a slow burn as long as it's a slow burn. I think they've had kind of like, slow spikes where we have really good pockets of Star Wars, but the pacing does seem a little off. This one felt like they put too much into it, so it's still continuing the slow burn, but it's actually sped up, which it feels a little off-putting.
Okay, all right.
But we are getting... They are going they're going to ground on the type of Star Wars performances that we've seen. We get the training scene and all that stuff, where that harkens back to the 1977 movie.
Exactly.
We're getting Star Wars. We're getting generational passing of the torch. You're getting a good story. I mean, she's not. Ahsoka herself is not where Obi-Wan was, destined to be at that point in time. So we do have a bright future ahead of us. And for me, it's not as much of a slow burn in the sense of I've come in loaded with having watched Rebels and the Clone Wars. So if this may be the biggest slow burn of it because I have all that knowledge. But in the show, it just seems like the pacing's off. Okay. I'm not sure if the show itself, to me, is a slow burn. But I will say I didn't watch it the first night it was on. I watched it on Thursday. So it wasn't like must-see TV. I think Netflix has destroyed all of that in me.
I see.
I do not, and I refuse to wait for a show. I will watch it when I watch it, and if it just happens to be the night it comes out, that's a happy happenstance. Actually, I think the thing that burned me was Battlestar Galactica, the reboot.
The Ronald D. Moore, the redo.
Yeah, that was on Friday nights, I believe,
was.
then it jumped to Sundays, and I
Yes.
actually stopped watching it when it did that. I refuse to be beholden to a television series' schedule. You don't get that out of me. You know, you don't. There's not enough fan in me to stop what I'm doing. You know, and because you've already asked me to put time aside in my life to enjoy it. And if I commit to it and then you are uncommitted, that really, I mean, it affected me. I didn't watch it for another 5 years, I think.
You know, it's interesting because you saw a lot of shows, especially that got extremely popular, but then maybe began to wane a little bit, or the studio or the network began to have a little less confidence in it, would start moving time slots or nights. And typically you did not see shows do well in the history of television. It's been kind of a, well, if you moved it once and you moved it a second time, it's probably a situation where they're like, we only have a little bit of life left in it, so we're going to set it over here so it's not as pronounced. And I thought the move to Sunday night was interesting. Sunday night's a very interesting time anyway. Historically, entertainment, it's a bit of a struggle. I mean, it's the last night before everybody goes back to work or goes back to school. It's just a very interesting night to try and capture a very large audience in real-time viewing.
Well,
anyway.
did you watch that series at all?
I watched it up until I believe the end of the second season is as far as I got.
So right when I believe it was around the time where they shifted to Sundays, they actually went with a very religious overtone. Mm-hmm. So it was very off-putting to me. It's like they're getting really religious. Like, I mean, they're diving deep into this. Now, and those shows were already very religious oriented back in the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So there's no like weirdness that they actually started going there, but they really leaned into it. They really leaned into Baltar being like, you know, space Jesus or whatever. And it was just, then they put it to Sundays. It's like, okay, all right. You know, we'll move on from here. I did actually go back to it and I did watch it and I did enjoy it. But I think it was just bad timing, and then the content just didn't lend itself to it. You know, shows like Star Trek Enterprise actually got screwed over from the timing, because here in Gainesville, I'm not sure if we're supposed to divulge.
Dun dun dun.
They actually had it in. You don't know what state.
Exactly.
They had it to where it was on UPN on Wednesdays, I believe. But
yes, it was.
They did not put it here on our television until Thursdays, right after Oprah.
Right. So what's that? 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock, and nobody is home from work.
Nope.
Nobody. So you have the East Coast effectively just hurting for this show that premiered, I believe, at night.
It did, yes.
Yeah, you know, and they moved it here, so they lost a lot of their customers, to the point where when they cancel it, they're like, nobody's watching. It's like, well, of course.
But there's a reason no one's watching.
Yeah, you guys are the worst. You're like the Big Ten television network. I mean, like,
wow.
Yeah, you guys.
That's a deep cut right there.
I mean, it should be. They really did not allow. So they partnered with UPN to deliver this.
They did.
And UPN completely destroyed that show just by putting it at the wrong time slot. And they had no faith in the fan base. And then once they canceled it, and all the actors and actresses, they moved on to NBC, right? And teaming up with them to go on Farscape and you know, Atlantis and all that stuff. So some of those characters were no longer going to have their actors available. So when the fandom, they actually ran a big fundraiser and raised the second, I guess, big problem was, we're like, well, we just don't have the funding anymore, and it would cost this much. And then the fans brought that much money, and they said, well, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. It's like, you really hate your fans.
So the decision had already been made.
The decision had already been made. They should have never even answered anything. They should have just been silent, let people, you know, gnash their teeth and, you know, spit in their eye and just be done with it. But they actually tried to make excuses, and then the fans brought the receipts, and then they're just like, well, we're just not going to give it to you anymore.
And for those that don't know UPN, if it predates you, that's basically what CW was. It became a merger between UPN and WB from back in the day, basically created CW. It's not just Enterprise that UPN launched. It also had Star Trek Voyager.
Yep.
That series was not released in first-run syndication, which is something that Broken Ansible and I grew up with. It wasn't just network television shows. You had all types of television shows airing on independent channels that were not aligned with ABC, NBC, CBS. Or they would be program fillers on the weekends or late at night after the local news went off the air. It was not uncommon to see Highlander or Nightman or in the late 90s Earth Final Conflict, Andromeda, Babylon 5. All of those were
UPN?
syndicated series. UPN was the first attempt of having a new quote-unquote network. But what it really was, it was an amalgamation of independent channels all over the country that were supposed to air, like Voyager, at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I forget what it was, on I think Wednesday night
Wednesdays
is
or
when
Thursdays,
it was.
yeah.
When Enterprise came along, by that time it had splintered so much, there was no consistency in when a show was going to be seen or going to be watched. And how do you build a fan base if nobody can follow when your program is on?
Yep.
Well, since we're talking Enterprise, we'll come back to Ahsoka in a second, but since I've opened up this can, a couple of questions for you. Last episode of Enterprise. The holodeck scene. How did it make you feel?
I felt nothing.
Ooh, a jaded view. Okay, all right.
I was already mad. I love that show.
You mean it didn't hurt worse if you're already mad?
So, I get what they're going for. I understand it. But it cheapened it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like we're gonna close the door on this one, and this was all part of the holodeck. I just no, did not do it for me. The show did it for me. The show was really good. I loved the whole Xindi arc. It was.
Do you think that gets ignored in Trek overall for being a really good run of Trek?
Well, I've heard some people that absolutely hate it. They hate Scott Bakula. I thought that even if you hate Scott Bakula, he was serviceable as a captain, and every character around him was good. Mm-hmm. Like, I loved T'Pol. I loved, the chief engineer. Gosh, I don't even remember half their names. The doctor was great.
Because you had Trip.
Yeah,
you had
Trip.
T'Pol.
Yeah. Yeah, people, they wanted that to be shipped, right? So they did it. I thought the doctor was really cool. I thought the Helms or the communications officer,
right.
She was really cool. She had a few story arcs where she was an evil person. I thought they really played around with the Star Trek formula, and it reminded me of those video games back in the 90s and 2000s where they were really exploring the universe, mm-hmm. where they would bring, and then the books as well, where they would bring in some external threats that you never heard of in the TV show, but the universe is huge, so it's not just Romulans, it's not just Klingons,
right? It's
not just the Borg. Let's bring in these other threats. I thought Voyager had the dinosaurs.
They did,
but I think the Enterprise did it really well. They were playing with the formula, and they just got axed too soon. They flew a little too close to the sun, so to speak.
Okay, so a couple of follow-up questions on that, and that is, do you consider the X-Men Star Trek The Next Generation book a in-canon crossover?
No, but there's several books that aren't canon that were really good. So,
how do you explain Storm liking Captain Jean-Luc Picard, but also working for him as Professor X? Confusing?
You've lost me.
Okay, I'm throwing these things out there. I have had a moment where I have nerded out. I apologize for doing that publicly. Interestingly, though, you don't hear a lot of the blowback from the extended universe canon from the Star Trek books. They're still very successful. They're still being written, still being released, and there have been some really good arcs, I think, in there, especially some of the ones focusing on the end of the Dominion War.
Yep,
I thought were
Dominion
very
War
interesting.
Were great. I actually have the books somewhere around here. Yeah, the Dominion War, where the Defiant gets they find one like in an ice.
Yes.
So, yeah, I have that one.
And I think that's a really good example of you can keep it in house, saying here are your parameters, but as long as you stay within these parameters, go.
And Star Trek has the Dragon Ball Z effect, where it got so popular so fast that through the Next Generation, and even with Deep Space Nine, where they didn't know where they were going. And of course, Brandon Braga doesn't have a clue on what the fans want. He may have like moments of brilliance, but he lives in a senile state of denial. So it's really interesting when they're in the creative flow. You like what they have, but when they know what they have and they try and expand on it, they really don't know what to do with it. So they go in 10 different directions.
I don't know if you ever had the opportunity, but there is a documentary. Basically, it's by Ira Steven Behr, who was the head of Deep Space Nine, talking about what a season 8 of Deep Space Nine would have looked like. Just doing storyboards. Here's what we thought would be a great season 8. If you ever get the chance, check it out. I won't spoil it for anybody, but it's a lot of things that make you go, now that could have been very interesting, because it would have flipped Deep Space Nine, literally the show, on its head. I think that could have been something. I don't know how the fan base would have reacted, but just looking at the storyboard, I'm like, you know what? You'd have gotten my attention. I'd have been like, well, I'm just here for the show at this point, because I got to see where this goes. So there's still some fan fiction. They're still doing the IDW comics, which I have some of those as well. And they do different crossovers and things, just kind of expanding the universe. But you don't see or sense the fan base as irritated, dare I use that terminology. Now, setting Discovery and maybe Strange New Worlds aside, because there's a lot of conflict there with musical episodes and Space Jesus and other things as well. We'll set that in that little pocket over there. But we want to come back to Ahsoka here, and it's been a long road getting from there to here.
You don't want to hear my expanding Voyager?
You see what I did there, though? I was quoting the theme song from Enterprise.
Really?
It's been a long road getting from there to here. I could sing it.
Now you're just gonna lose your audience.
I didn't have an audience to begin with. That's okay. So we'll go back to Ahsoka, who has no words to sing, so you don't have to worry about hearing that. I thought episode 3 was interesting. I really like the non-Jedi. Jedi, I guess is how we say it. I like that they're kind of addressing Ahsoka as far as she's not a Jedi. She has Jedi training.
Yep.
She knows the ways of the Jedi, but she walked away from the Order. And I'm glad they've kind of made a point of that, because I was curious about that going in. I would like to ask you, from your expanded universe knowledge, Sabine being trained as a Jedi. Maybe it's established in Rebels and I'm just ignorant, and I'm willing to own that live and in public.
It is.
Was she Force sensitive, or considered to be Force sensitive? Because the way they portray it in this series, it would be like asking me to wield a lightsaber. We'd be in trouble.
So, Star Wars Theory has a video on this, and I think anybody should check that out, just to have another voice in this. And I agree with him. So the whole idea behind the Force was that it lives in everybody.
Right. And they made a point of saying that in this episode.
Yes. So there has never been a single idea that one could not become Force sensitive, which was the interesting angle that they fumbled completely with the 7th episode or 7th movie. Was that The Force Awakens, right? Mm-hmm. That if they had have made the Force Awakening everywhere, that would have been something, but they chose not to. So the Force awakened in one person. Who cares? She's a terrible character. Like, at least by the end of what they did to her, she was a garbage character, Rey. And so you have somebody who is literally not Force sensitive in Sabine. You have her being in she's a part of a race that's never really been Force sensitive, because they are very focused on in the moment combat.
And they addressed that in that episode as well. They made a passing reference to that. And in Clone Wars and in Rebels, the Mandalorian story arc is actually really, really huge. And especially in the Mandalorian show, they've talked about the Mandalorians. They have never really been one with nature unless it was very primal.
And I think that bringing balance to the Force, Anakin's role in this whole thing, most people think it's to bring Luke and Leia onto the scene, and certainly there's some truth to that. But it's never been just about what they brought. He brought Ahsoka up. Ahsoka walked away from the Jedi,
Right.
But the Jedi really walked away from her.
I was just going to say.
And when you think about it, the Jedi, one, were always in the wrong. They were absolutely, without a doubt, in the wrong. They were the antagonists in the prequels.
You were so uncivilized.
They were absolutely wrong. Anakin was the correct one the entire time. He was asking the right questions all the time. His frustrations were supposed to be reflected in the frustrations they wanted you to see as the viewer. Why are these space monks committing war crimes? Why are they doing this? And they're trying to protect peace. So if you are sitting there trying to tell me that these people cared about peace so much that they would go to murder and they would allow genetic human beings to be made by the millions, correct, to fight in this war with numbers, paint by numbers, it's crazy. Not only that, but you have story arcs in the shows where Jedi were actually going dark because they couldn't reconcile the teachings of the Jedi with what they're actually doing. And it was the people, like, the best Jedi, the best of the Jedi, I should say, the peace bringers that were still there, they didn't speak a lot. They held their tongue. They didn't speak out. So you have these moments of, why are you not allowing Anakin to have a wife? Why are you not allowing people to, form long-term attachments? Why is all this infrastructure built and you're saying do not fear, when the whole idea of the Jedi's actions was to fear the fact that they were losing peace, the peace that they helped. That's a very narcissistic point.
It is.
And not a lot of people get that. So the Jedi are actually the bad guys. The Sith are just bad guys that are catalyst for the demise. They're there to bring about a change. They've already been, destroyed by the Jedi, and to the fact that they have to go to the rule of two. You don't hear about, gray Jedi, dark Jedi. You don't hear about that in the canon. Of course, that there are pockets. There's like one or two that don't get found by the Jedi, but the Jedi had an infrastructure to find kids so young that by the time that the idea that they would have these pockets of Force users, those were really the Night Sisters. Those were the Sith were cultivating those, so they were enshrouded in darkness anyway. So when we get to bringing balance to the Force in Ahsoka is bringing balance to the Force. So Anakin is bringing balance to the Force in many different ways politically, having Leia as a daughter, by having Luke as coming in and training up a new Jedi Order that's not going to be so hell-bent on keeping peace, to the fact that they'll have a multi-system war and be generals. Ahsoka, who's just like, she's noping out of everything. She's like, nope, I don't want to have a part of it. And but at the same time, she sees the evil that rises out of the ashes of evil. And I do consider the Jedi somewhat evil. It's the banality of evil.
Okay.
So the Jedi, and that may be not a popular opinion, I still love the Jedi. Don't get me wrong. I still think that their ways was to show what people should work towards. But if you look at, if you had 10,000 Jedi that are supposed to be beacons and examples, then why is Coruscant one of the most corrupt places in the universe?
Well, just remember, when Order 66 is initiated,
nobody cares.
Look where everybody is. At least the ones they showed on screen. Obi-Wan's on a planet. One's flying a fighter and gets shot down from behind. one Lady Jedi is walking and gets shot in the back 537.36 times, and still being shot right now.
Yes.
Apparently, the way the scene was shot was CGI. Not one of them is on Coruscant. Not one of them is working with the children. Not one of them is doing anything, quote-unquote, peace-minded. They're all out fighting a war that, to be honest, they had no business fighting in the first place. Oh, a group wants to break off on their own. So you're telling me, just make sure I understand this correctly, that if a group wants to go do something else and not be part of your group, they're the enemy and must be destroyed?
Yep.
And so that's the tact you take. How can I take you intellectually honest? Now, to be fair, if all you've ever seen is the first 6 movies, maybe that's clear, maybe not as much, depending on how much you've actually seen, how much of the media you've consumed. But it's very interesting that the Jedi are held out of these beacons of everything. But in reality, I go back and watch episodes 2 and episodes 3, and I think to myself, Hayden Christensen's role, and I think a lot of stuff got cut that should not have been cut, because I think that would have fleshed it out more. What's it been estimated? An hour at least?
Probably so.
For episode 3?
For episode 3, I mean, they have the beginning scene's supposed to be 23 minutes longer.
And I think that kind of stuff would have given the story more clarity. Now you're getting a lot of this from extended sources, which are still good. But I just feel like that, I think Lucas started it with an idea. But when you really start fleshing out that idea, you start looking and going, oh, wait a minute. That works good in 3 movies. But now when you start talking about where did all this come from, now you start going, now wait a minute. Maybe this is not as altruistic as we think it is. And I think that's really been one of the failures of the Jedi, that whether it's been purposefully shown or not, it's just kind of where it is.
I think it's purposeful. I think what he was going for was that there is a cycle, and when people get caught up into it, a lot of things can go by the wayside. I mean, look at the New Republic, what they're devolving into, to the point where in episode 7, when they die,
yes,
I feel nothing for them, because I see this hedonistic mentality starting to creep up in The Mandalorian and in Ahsoka, where the New Republic is not really all that correct. It still has so much stink of the last 2 republics,
right?
Or the Empire and the Old Republic, or the Republic. That, I mean, do I care if their armies get wiped out? Well, they're not doing anything for the people who need it anyway. Like, it makes you wonder. I think Dave Filoni has a vision of where Star Wars was trying to go. They wanted to show you that this was an allegory for real life. This was an allegory of this is how people live. The Jedi aren't evil. It's the banality of evil. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
And the Jedi were caught up in the very same thing. They helped form, they may have upheld the peace for so long, and they had their tenet, Jedi, that in the teachings, and they turned it into a machine, and I think it worked for a lot of people, but it also made it really easy to undermine. It made a lot of loopholes really easy, and I think you can see a lot of the stuff happening in real time in our outside of the world, which is almost a little off-putting because they're a little bit too on the nose and too ahead of their time.
That's true.
Especially when the movies came out, it was effectively Padme's like little snip at the George Bush presidency with the war.
Is this how democracy dies?
Yes, I with the Patriot Act. So yeah, I do believe that they are standing in as an allegory for how outside of the movie how humans are. So I think that's where they get their science fiction. Of course we have the fantasy, we have the worlds, the world building, the creatures. That's the fantasy aspect of it. And I don't think the science fiction comes from the droids or the ships and the space battles. I mean, those are nice.
Right.
But, we can get that in Star Trek. So
True.
I think one of the things that Star Wars does as a science fiction, what would humanity do? And that is the corruption of time and having things to lose. And the Jedi are there to say, hey, what if humanity, or what if an aspect of humanity said you shouldn't have anything to lose? If you have something to lose, then you've already lost. So you need to let go, and then you can truly be free. And we see how far that gets them. It gets them 10,000 years or so, but they become space cops in the process. You know, they become the world police, and the planets are still corrupt. You know, we still have the red suns. We still have the Hutts. And you know, if darkness pushes out farther, yeah, there may be a light at the center of the universe, but it's still pretty black out there on the edges. So to the point where the Jedi wouldn't even bother going. You know, and that there was a lot of resentment built out in the outer worlds. Tatooine, you know, is the hive of scum and villainy. You know,
You'll never see such a place.
You never see such a place. So I think that there's a lot of lessons that George Lucas was trying. You know, he comes from a very art house background. I mean, he did American Graffiti,
right?
So he's a true storyteller. Now, I think that his scripting, by the time he was in the prequels, I think that he needed help. But I think his vision is spot on. And I think that Dave Filoni's bringing that vision to fruition. I just don't know if we live in a time where that vision holds up to, you know, other content, especially how Disney has put a lot of emphasis on their own stuff, which is kind of contradicting, and putting shackles on where they can go with the Mandalorian and
right.
Ahsoka. But, you know, I like the Ahsoka book. It was good, and I like this show, and I think some of the books have been successes. So some of the stuff Disney's put out is, or at least under their watch, has been good. Some of it's been terrible, but
yeah, and I think their biggest struggle, and chime in with this, is that, in using a sports analogy, you're always saying winners win. You know what cures all ills? Winning.
Yep.
You don't have to win 99% of your games, but if you can win 80 or 70, you're in the playoffs every year, whatever your chosen sport is. And you know what? You get a lot more time, and that leash gets a whole lot longer for the coaches and for the players. When you're scrounging 30% victories through the year, 40%, it's not getting it done. And I think that's...
Unless you're in the SEC.
Well, I mean, everybody needs a Vanderbilt. Everybody needs a Missouri. Everybody needs a Mississippi State.
You can win 9 games. You lose 1 to them, and you're fired next day.
Oh, that could be true. That would be sort of the Florida pattern. Of course, you know, it'll take 3 years to win a combined 9 games the way they're going this season. But I think that's really probably Disney's biggest haunt, is they don't win enough in real time. You can't go back and look at the 90s and the 2000s and say, look at all we've done. But you haven't won lately. It's like the Dallas Cowboys, whom, let us not forget, Mike, they are America's team. They'll tell you if you don't know. But when was the last time they won a Super Bowl? It was the 90s, when you had Deion Sanders and Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin. And those are great Hall of Fame players, but we're talking about 30 years ago. They're still relevant because they make the most money, but truthfully, at best, they're going to be finishing second place this year more than likely, and probably, hopefully, a good season for them is getting to the NFC title game. I mean, it's slipped a long way. They're still relevant as far as their name, but the production and the results haven't been there. I kind of feel like that's where Disney is, if we were to put it in a sports vernacular, is they're relevant because of name, because of past history, but not because of recent history. I mean, we're getting to the point now where in about 5 years, all that Marvel success is going to be 10 years ago.
Yep.
15 years ago.
It's going to be your kids like, oh, that's old.
Exactly.
And they've gone from being Final Four, sending some teams to the Final Four,
yep,
to being sending only things to the NIT.
Yep.
And that's where Ahsoka, for me, it's it's that break. They're in that moment where a team is in the NIT and you know they're going to go to the final. They're going to actually be asked into a division that can get them into the Final Four, where they're going to be taken. They're going to be taken with some credibility of, if we lose to you, it's not going to destroy us. Mm-hmm. So we will play you even if we lose to you. And when you're talking about like winning, when your opponent actually isn't scared to lose against you, that's when you know you've made it. And I don't think Disney's in that place with the fans. I don't think they can get a win from the fandom.
So to that point, that's a great transition. Is it a fulfilling prophecy? Because we were talking about this before we actually started recording. And we don't have to mention any specific names or content providers. Hey, good on you. But there's a segment of the fan base that I'm pretty sure will, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this gently on the air, that will be adamantly opposed to anything that comes out Star Wars related. It could literally be a wonderful series, and I still think there's a certain segment be like, well, no, it's not good. Why? Because Disney put it out.
Yep.
Or because, well, I don't like that casting, or they flipped a character's gender from a female character to a male character, or had some type of ethnicity, which 10% of the fan base even knows that's a thing. 90% will not because of the investment. And it just seems like in some cases, and you can say Disney brought it on themselves. That's fair. But I think there is a certain segment that simply are pulling for everything to collapse on itself. And so I'll ask you, Broken Ansible, where are you on that spectrum?
So Disney did bring it upon themselves. Disney should never have gotten into a schism in their fans. Mm-hmm. So there are those who like the new movies, mm-hmm. despite being terrible movies. There are the fans that hate them with their inner fiber, and they can't seem to come to an agreement to just disagree. And when Disney is the one putting out the content, and they expect it to always be good because they made it. They spent money on it.
Sure.
They have people that have told them this is good. When this has happened, they are going to throw in their hat with the fans that give them a confirmation bias. And they should have never done that. They should have just been, mum's the word, you can like it, you can love it, and they should silently listen to the gripes and try to appease those people in what way they could under the umbrella that they had, and just been, you don't like it, don't watch it. Mm-hmm. And people would have eventually petered out. But now you have channels and influencers that are making a career on hating everything that they put out, even if it's good. And it's baffling to me how, I used to listen to a lot of these folks before they waged into this like anti-Disney stuff. And I can't agree with some of their opinions. I'm just like, I saw the show. I enjoyed the show. It's not that different when you were praising, the Rebels shows. This is the Rebels season 5. Mm-hmm. This is, this is what they would have put in a cartoon form. There is no woke here. There is,
right.
Sabine is not a woke character. I don't care what people have to say about her. I don't even care if the actor's woke. She can be woke all she wants. I don't care. Just like I don't care about the guy who plays the Mandalorian. He's woke as a joke.
Oh, Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I don't care if, to me, he's off-putting politically on Twitter. You know what? Everybody's politically off-putting on Twitter.
Exactly.
It's a place you shouldn't take serious. You're not a serious person if you put too much stock into Twitter. Mm-hmm. I can't take anybody seriously on Twitter. So I don't care what he says. I still like him as the Mandalorian. I still liked him as Joel on the Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about that stuff permeating. And that's also double-edged swords because I don't want it permeating into my shows. right? Keep your real life stuff out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Take me to a place far, galaxy far away from all this. You bought the property that the tagline is in a galaxy far away. I don't need to hear. You can tell me a story about humanity, but you don't need to bring modern day politics or social issues into it. And I don't care about any of that stuff. Now, Disney shouldn't have done it, but I think there's a very interesting dilemma you have with a lot of creators, the authors of these stories. Some of them want to self-insert, and I think there's times when self-inserts are good. Dave Filoni is a self-insert. He's and you know what, he deserves it. Mm-hmm. But there's some comic books where you have these people who are no-name authors self-inserting themselves into comic books, and it's off-putting.
Right.
And why are these people getting paid to do what they do? Yeah, I don't begrudge them getting paid, but when you sell all of 5 comics, don't hate the people who didn't buy it.
Well, exactly.
Like you diversify your income,
mm-hmm.
Because you may not make it, and 2, don't get mad when people don't like it. You know what? Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, here we go.
Did not aim for the stars.
They're from outer space. They come from the stars.
Right. Yeah.
See what I did there? That's funny because they're from the stars.
Sam Hell Comes to Frogtown. They were not trying to be the next, Emmy Award. They didn't want to go to the award shows. They didn't care. They just wanted to put a movie that was going to be played on USA Up All Night.
And indeed, it has. What about They Live? Does that count in that too?
They Live does count in that terms. So you have cult classics.
Absolutely.
And eventually, somebody, somewhere, is going to find your content, and they're going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. It may take a long time for that to happen. But eventually, if it isn't overly marketed and then thrown in the trash, like a GameStop will throw games in the trash, if the media survives in some form, somebody somewhere is going to see it. And I think that's okay. The market's big enough to have woke stuff. The market's big enough to have not woke stuff. I think the market's big enough to have a collision to see. And I think Star Trek has actually done a really good job. There's an episode in Enterprise mm-hmm. where Trip is actually trying to understand the couple that's trying to have a baby, and they have a third person, mm-hmm. and that's a non-binary, but carries the baby for the other parts of the race. That is a very uncomfortable episode for Trip because he's coming from different sensibilities.
Right.
And that's what science fiction is supposed to allow you to do. Now, Star Wars is a little bit different, right? Star Wars, they don't really go into those. They have more overarching political. How does the species and the interspecies as a whole decline at the macro level? Star Trek's always been at the micro level. So I think what Disney has done is put themselves in a position where they're cultivating the hate watchers. Mm-hmm. They deserve all the criticism they get, both sides. So, the people who just hate Disney for whatever, they deserve the criticism they get by the people who like the content that Disney's putting out. And Disney deserves all the criticism that they've cultivated. And everybody that sides with Disney, everybody should be ashamed of themselves that they're getting upset over, fiction. Mm-hmm. Like, I see people doing this at hockey games and soccer games. I can understand that a little bit. I mean, it's sad to see all around, but at least there's something there. I mean,
right.
we're talking,
it's not fantasy; it's happening in real time.
We're talking about books and movies now. I don't think we live in a culture that can be honest about.
Ooh, that's a stretch right there.
I don't think they can be honest about having gender swaps. Mm-hmm. I don't think they can be honest about race swaps. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that we even have to talk in those terms,
right?
Because on the face of it, I think everybody could agree on both sides that it shouldn't matter.
It's
right?
fiction.
It's fiction. It shouldn't matter. The fact is that Disney's aligned themselves in such a way that they have taken a wedge issue in real life, a political wedge issue, and they've brought it into their content in ways that's just not interesting.
Right.
And it's on the nose, and it's for instance, if you had a black Superman,
mm-hmm.
why would you do that? So my next door neighbor here, who owns the house next door, his mother lives there now, African American dude, Marine, has served the country for at least 20 years. One of the best dudes you'll ever meet. Everybody calls him Superman. He's got a Superman tattoo. He's got a Superman thing on his car, always. Superman resonated with him so hard, he's called Superman by everybody he knows. Black dude. He did not need Superman to be black. He didn't. So if you make so what would that look like today? They would probably do something like they did in the Fantastic Four. They'd make a white couple, found a black kid, grew him up. Well, that's not going to work with me because I grew up in the 70s. I know that that's not a believable reality of that time, and that's my point of reference.
Okay.
So you can't tell me in Kansas there's going to be this white couple that takes a black alien in, or vice versa.
Right.
Or you're going to have a black farmer out there. Even if that could happen, that's not how society sees it at the time. Now, could that happen today? So the juxtaposition is when you see in Logan,
right,
where you had the black farmer,
mm-hmm.
no problem. That's because that's 30 years into the future. It's there. The times have changed. So why would you try to retcon a character for just to have, some unbelievable ups by at least half the people that'll watch it? So for the young people, their point of reference is going to be 2023.
Right.
Who cares? Why can't we have a black farmer? Why can't we have a black Superman? Why can't? But that's not the case. It's not a point of would people believe in a black Superman. It's like, is that just a believable situation for 1980 or 1970?
If you put it in today's market and carry it forward, I guess you could do that, make it an Elseworld story or whatever DC calls it whenever they want to do something that makes no sense. But again, what is the purpose? If you're just trying to sell books, just be honest with that and say that. And I'm not going to be mad at you if you just say, look, we're trying to capitalize on Superman. I'll high five you and say that's marketing 101, right on. Are you making a political statement? Well, then tell me, and I'll be like, I can appreciate where you're coming from, but don't leave me dangling out there to have to wonder. One of the hardest things in business, and Broken Ansible, I know with what you do and what I do, communication is the big deal.
Yep.
And you can't leave me out there wondering the whys. And unfortunately, we're in a world now where everything comes with a why. Why did you make this choice? Why did you cast this person? Why? It's not, can we just go to the movies, like you said here before, and just enjoy the cinematic experience and be told a story? And now we're from the South, so if we went and saw, let's say, Smoking the Bandit, we'd break into our little clubs after the fact and discuss the Trans Am and stuff, because that's what us Southern folk do. But the whole point is to go and be entertained. Maybe be thought-provoking. Or maybe just go in there if it's a comedy and just laugh like idiots and be like, that is the stupidest thing, but I needed that laugh. Not, well, we needed to do this because we're trying to ascribe to some political ideology, whichever one it is, and I don't really care. But there's no honesty in presentation.
Yep.
And again, I don't care what you do, but just be honest with the why.
Yep. And it's all a matter of timing too, in a place of presentation. So
Sure.
You don't need, if you want a black Superman, by all means, write a black Superman.
Sure.
But make it,
which they're working on right now at DC.
Yeah, make it feel like it belongs, and not that you're trying to take away. And I thought they already had that. I mean, didn't we have a black Superman?
They do.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe it was Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a comic book or a comic book series. It wasn't.
no, I'm talking about after Superman died. Wasn't one
They
of them?
did. They had John Henry Irons,
Yeah,
who was Steel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've already done it. Why can't we go back to some of those threads, like post, Death of Superman,
Not the Shaquille O'Neal version. Right?
or actually just have a reimagining like a Spider-Man 2029 or 2099,
Okay.
where let's just go into the future. I would love for them to be able to have a universe where they don't have to worry about any of the modern day, like the whataboutisms,
Right.
and the hey, this Superman's white dude because he's been a white dude for 60 years and now you're changing on us. I don't trust you with this. And where maybe they just had, like, would anybody care if it was Denzel Washington? Like, he could play any character he wants.
He can be Pop Kent all he
Dude,
wants, and I would eat it up.
He can play Oprah Winfrey. I will watch it. But
Okay, that I would watch just because, sure.
yeah, I just don't. But what's the Michael B. Jordan? I think he could, dude. Have you? Right, and that what really ticks me off about the fall of the villain from
Oh, here we go, Killmonger.
No, I hated Killmonger. I thought that character was stupid.
Or Killmonger.
No, I thought the whole movie was mediocre. Like the supporting cast was the absolute cream of the crop. The protagonist antagonist was just garbage. I thought Black Panther himself was just milk toast. Like you're not a leader, dude. The guy on the mountain is the leader. Your mom.
M'Baku?
Yeah, M'Baku. Your mom's the leader. Your sister's the leader, not you, bro. Like, no.
And they kind of really did that with the second movie with the mom. Which, by the way, I love me some Angela Bassett.
Oh yeah,
that is a regal lady right there.
Yeah, she's something else.
She has so much credibility and believability in her little finger. What I wish I had in my whole body, she exudes it.
Have you watched that movie Supernova with her?
I have seen Supernova, yes.
Yes, that's one of my favorite movies with her in it. She was also in that crazy movie where it was like it's a science fiction movie. Gosh, it came out right before, or right after that. I can't remember the name of it, but I digress. I could talk about Angela Bassett for hours.
If only you could see the smile on his face right now. He's a happy man.
So I haven't watched the second movie because the first one, I thought there's enough there in the first movie to like, and I see why a lot of people like it, but I'm just like, it's not even top 10 for me of Marvel films. Matter of fact, it might be in the 20s.
I think from a spectacle.
Yeah, it's a great spectacle.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous presentation for a movie.
All the supporting cast are cream of the crop.
Absolutely.
All the side stories are cream of the crop. I don't like Black Panther in that movie. I don't like Killmonger in that movie. I thought their motives were stupid. I thought Killmonger was just he's the epitome of a sociopath gone too far. And I don't need you to make me believe that somebody's a sociopath. I can see a sociopath a mile away.
Right.
I don't need you to try and buy me into that. And once he did what he did to his partners, and that movie flipped. It was like that. There's a moment in Training Day with Denzel Washington where Ethan Hawke kind of wakes up to the reality of things,
of what's going on. Yeah.
It's a hard wake up, and no pun intended, because I think he pretty much wakes up into this world where his life is on the line.
Absolutely. And
that is how, when I felt that in that movie, that's why that movie is like, it's probably top 10 movie of all time. And, they deserve Oscars for it. That movie has presence, gravitas. And I thought that Killmonger, when he did the things to his partners, that movie did that moment in the wrong way for me.
Okay.
He killed all the excitement that built up, because I was going to see where this was going. It was like, oh no, he's been like this all along, and we played. He was doing a little dance for you in this like precursor of like, hey, we're gonna do this heist, and then next thing you know, he's killing his girlfriend. It's like, what that's wrong. Like, so he's a sociopath, and then he kills the best side character that's been in several movies, like Andy Serkis's character.
Right.
Like, how dare you? Like,
how dare you hurt
you?
Mr. Claw?
Yeah, he was funny. He was just like, I like you, dude. Let's do this more. And Kilmar's like, nope, you're dead. I didn't get it. I didn't want it. Didn't buy it. I thought that there was enough there in the movie to kind of remind me of the good times of the 90s. Mm-hmm. So I think that the director was really going for, hey, I was a fan of, Shanghai Nights. I was a fan of the buddy cop movies.
Rush Hour?
Yeah, Rush Hour movies. I thought this movie is paying homage to the Jet Li movies. There's something here. So the world building was quite excellent in that movie. But, man, it was like I was watching a completely different intro to the character. It's like, I got you in Civil War. I don't need you to tell me your upbringing now.
The argument can be made the first 30 minutes of Black Panther, the original movie, is extremely confusing because we just got that, well, not just, it was a year or so before in Civil War, and there were some tweaks to it versus what they presented. Like, he knew who he was already. He knew who his father was. He knew about this. Now you're telling me the backstory. What you could have done is done it in about 5 or 10 minutes and shown the pre-Civil War. Then it could have made perfect sense, and you pick up from where Civil War ends. They didn't choose to do that. They chose to almost retcon their own movie a year and a half later, which still is very confusing to me what the thought process is, but maybe we just...
Disney has a habit of it. They did it with Guardians of the Galaxy and the last... Avenger film. Like,
that's true.
I did not like Thor in that movie. I thought Thor was disgusting in that movie. They were getting too. They were throwing shade at the fandoms, where they were portraying them as, frat boy, pizza drinking, beer, Xbox, racial slurring over.
Right.
That everybody knows you don't go on Xbox to make friends. That's a place where 13-year-olds yell at you for you not being able to put 15 hours into a game. And they know that saying some epitaph is going to get under your skin to the point where they not only are they beating you, but they're beating you twice. And that's not what most gamers are. That's what 13-year-old delinquent boys on Xbox do. I mean, that's it. And for them to like bring that into a Marvel film was a little shabby.
That's a lot of Hollywood's opinion, though, of gamers in general, that...
They got a product to sell you, man.
And I'm like, but do you really want to tick off the people that are buying some of the highest-end merchandise that you have? Because...
Disney doesn't like money. Haven't you understood that?
I guess we come at it from different perspectives, because I sure like it. I'd like to have more of it, but...
Well, Disney thinks that they're too big to fail. Disney forgot that they're trying to sell... the Guardians video game to people. I still haven't bought it.
I believe they shut that down. Now they're not doing it anymore.
The Guardians Galaxy?
Yep, it's done.
Oh, they're not making any more video games.
They're not making any more games. Yeah, that Telltale stuff is done, from what I understand.
But isn't there the new one, right? The new game is more of an action game?
No, it's done. The last iteration they released will be the last one. It will not be a newer one
until they sell the rights off to another group.
Well, I mean,
so all that stuff is seasonal. And I know we kind of slammed EA the last time, but I will point out that EA is making the best Star Wars content next to Dave Filoni. Jedi Survivor, and that's some cream of the crop stuff. They were allowed to succeed, and they've done nothing but succeed since then. And I think the fans really do that content resonates with them, despite it being EA. So I would consider in the future that we would be seeing more. Now, are people going to care about Marvel? And that I think they've done to their media enough damage. Not through woke and, breaking the fourth wall and, bringing modern day politics into it, just being mediocre. Like, and COVID hasn't helped.
True.
And this idea that you can get away with hiring no names. So let's be intellectually honest. You can, when you hit gold like George Lucas. He was a no name.
Correct.
And he brought upon a $1 billion idea, dropped it on the world, and changed the entire world. Tokyo has airplanes with R2-D2 on the side. I mean, come on. People go crazy for Star Wars, even if they hate watching. You're not going to get that in 2023 when you have way too many irons in the fire.
And look at the changes they made to the industry. You have Industrial Light and Magic. You have all these techniques and things that were developed either via him or based on what they were able to do in the movies. It revolutionized.
Well, they had to.
Try this again in English. It revolutionized. I'll get it here in a second. Entertainment as we know it, from special effects to the ability to create things that look like they're there, but they're not really there. Remember the stop caption.
Or that they're there as puppets. And
yes.
It blends right in because they understood lighting and shadowing. And there's a lot of the modern day. I mean, look at Farscape. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
So we obviously have professionals in this industry in California right now. They can do wonders.
Absolutely.
They can, and they have, right? And it just seems like as we go along, the allegory from Star Wars holds true. Like, you get to season 6 on the Game of Thrones, and then it all goes to heck.
Yeah.
They have the lightning in the bottle, and then it goes to heck. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen with The Last of Us 2. They had a hit series. It is pretty much a 1-to-1 with the video game. You don't have to play the video game now. And are they going to make it like the second video game? Because I don't have any interest in seeing it. Not of the content of the, what the problems we have in regard to the controversies around the video game, but actually I just don't want to see my character go through that. I don't need that. I didn't play the video game because I was, I was told the first kind of 20 minutes, and then I went and saw it, and I was just like, this isn't a Joss Whedon moment. I don't want to. When I want a Joss Whedon, I'll go to Joss Whedon.
Right.
If he wants to kill off 10 characters, I don't care. But he's going to make those characters so lovable, and then I trust him to get me through the rest of it because he's going to give me back more than he took. But I don't trust these people making The Last of Us, so to give me more than they take. And Pedro did such a good job as Joel. I just don't want to see that guy go through anything more than he's already gone through. It's been through enough in season 2. I just don't know if I can see it.
And that's the interesting thing. Remember, The Walking Dead has a penultimate episode in season 7 where Negan is introduced, and bats are flying, and he creams Abraham, and then he creams Glenn. And I'll never forget the reaction of people. They were so upset it was too graphic, and I'm thinking to myself, it is a horror show where literally zombies consume people. And you're upset that a baseball bat cracked someone in the head hard enough to either dislodge their eye socket and then finally kill them. That's probably the least violent thing that they have done in 7 seasons. But a large amount of the fan base said, no, we're done. We're good. And after that, they truly saw a downtick in the ratings, even though they were quasi following the source material. That is what happens in the source material.
And they're getting
except,
the character.
well, it's not Abraham doesn't. He gets killed at a different time, but with a different way. But a lot of people turned on it, and I was always like, But that's where they were going the entire time. You're upset about this. Did you not care about the rest of it? But again, fan is short for fanatic. You like what you like. You don't like what you don't like. And sometimes the darkness gets to be too much. You're like, I'm good.
I don't think it was... It's not the darkness. It's that if you only keep it in the dark...
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said with Joss Whedon, he will take from you, but he will give you back. When you see the pilot in Serenity die, he gives him a moment, and man, you can tell, like, it hits his wife hard. And you knew, if this gets a sequel, I can't wait to see it. I want to see what happens after. I want to see what happens to this character after. How does she take it? Because that was her balance. He was the yin to her yang. So I wanted to see that. And I didn't care that my characters... I mean, I was mad that Glenn got it, but that's because I really like Glenn. He's a really good character. He has a very good character arc.
Yep.
The actor, he's one of those guys where, he probably would have never got a chance anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And he blew up as an actor.
Yep.
His and I don't think I've seen him that much since.
He's got a Netflix series right now.
Yeah.
It's a little dicey with the language. It's pretty constantly dicey. So I only made it through about half the first episode. He's alleged to be part of a Marvel movie. He's going to be one of the protagonists in that.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
That'll be interesting to see as well. But like you said, he blew up. He's kind of got the ability to pick and choose now. How nice that must be.
Yeah, and I don't mind that he's not in it anymore. Mm-hmm. We do have the ability to have look backs and fadeaways.
Absolutely,
and they can do that with anybody. And it, by taking away a character, it can really make other characters different, and it has.
It does.
Maggie's definitely evolved as a character. I thought she's a little dicey through 7 and 8 because she's basically just holding on.
Right.
But I haven't watched the new stuff. I haven't watched season 9 or 10 or the New York stuff.
Right.
I haven't seen any of that. But I do watch it, and I see where they're taking Negan. And Negan, that's why I stopped watching it. When Negan was on the porch eating spaghetti, I think, with the kid.
Yep.
That actually, I stopped watching it because I was binging it, and I do think that when you binge stuff like that, it does take a toll. Like, I can't watch what's that drug show?
Oh, Breaking Bad.
I can't watch that. So I watched the first 3 seasons, binged it, and it was just, I'm done. I hate every single one of these characters. The most likable character in the show is the stupid cop. And I can't take this as a person anymore. There's no redeeming elements. This is just a downward spiral into hell. And I did not really like it. I think the show is great. Like, I think the acting is top notch. I think the artistic, it made me feel like I was there. And that is a double-edged sword, because when you binge that show, you feel as dirty as these characters. When the girlfriend is dying, and you're just like, what? Like, this is rough. This is rough. And there's real people that go through realities like this. If you have that epiphany and you're just like, man, this is too much. This is a little heavy. You can turn it off.
Yep.
Just turn it off. And if you can keep going, more power to you.
Right.
But if you want to turn it off and be okay with it. Now, I've tried to go back and watch it and start over again. And you're just like, man, this is such a good show. This is such a good show. And it gets to that point where it runs you down as a person again. You're like, yeah, there's a reason why I turned it off, and I'm not turning it back on. And I've gone through the first 3 seasons 2 times.
And that's as far as you can get.
Yep, and maybe I'll go to the lawyer show because I
Better
thought
Call Saul.
That dude is crazy. I thought he stole every scene that he's in. I really liked that story arc, and it may be I'm not sure, but it may be a little less dicey as the original show. I just didn't like any of the characters in the first one. The character of the kid, He was my second favorite, and then the cop, the brother-in-law. He's like the best guy because at least he stands for something. I mean,
Right.
he wants to see the best in people, but everybody else is just like, you are irredeemable people, and I don't like having a feeling that somebody's irredeemable. Disney is not irredeemable. People, who hate Disney are not irredeemable. People that are on both political spectrums, you're not irredeemable. Everybody has a story arc.
Absolutely.
Everybody can have a positive outcome. Nothing that you see in these TV shows that want to just show you the darkness and none of the light. Maybe you're going to get a little insight into the darkness of humanity. Maybe that's what you needed, and you got that out of it. That's good for you. I don't need to sit here and watch these people into a downward spiral that when you binge watch it, maybe week to week it would have been better for me.
Maybe.
But when you are able to binge watch, that's very dangerous for a show like Breaking Bad. And The Walking Dead, I kind of get the same thing. I can get through the first 7 seasons binging. When you start to get to the 8th season, and you get to the king,
It's good to be the king.
and his personality, it's just like, that's like, I'm one of his subjects that's holding on to this reality that of goodness, and somebody has to be the king.
And yet I smile.
Yeah, and so it resonates with me, like when I'm binge watching that, and I get to that point, I'm just like, I want to turn this off and end with a happy ending, because it's not happy if you keep going through season 8. Not happy at all. And I think there's some goodness to, there's good storytelling in that, because
Right.
it's a drama. You need to go up, you need to go down, you need to go up, and The Walking Dead does a pretty good job of keeping that tug of war going.
It does.
But if you, and which is why I think Negan's story arc, I'm liking Negan more and more, because he's basically telling you, yeah, I'm a bad dude, but I can guarantee you, everybody behind me, I'm holding back the gates of hell.
I will just tell you this, not to spoil anything, but your perspective on Negan will only become more emboldened as that series goes on, and when you finally get to Dead City. You have cracked the code very early on of who he is. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan eats up the screen in everything that he does. By the way, a couple of things for you, since we'll finish up here talking about The Walking Dead. The Daryl Dixon series starts next weekend. Well, Thursday for us, because we have AMC Plus, because we have it for one more month before it.
Can we just have Michonne back?
Rick and Michonne's show will be back in middle of next year.
Are they actually making one?
6 episodes.
No.
They're calling it the ones who live, or the ones that live. Okay.
I thought that she's such an amazing actress.
They will do 6 episodes of that. Dead City's been renewed for season 2.
Oh, good.
And in November, and this is where I wanted to get to before we transition to something else, they're releasing a new Walking Dead video game. And here's the hook. What if you could rebook or retell the story of The Walking Dead? Change complete story arcs of someone died here, or this decision. No, we changed that decision. And they allow you to play out the first 7 seasons of The Walking Dead, but you get control over the decision processes of making. For example, and here's the one they keep working on the trailers. What if Shane was the one who killed Rick? What would The Walking Dead? What?
Should have been the one that killed Rick.
I think Shane had the right idea. But what if he had? How would the story have played out over the rest of the season? So that's kind of their hook to get you to buy the video game. Might be something interesting.
I'll tell you. Do you want my on the cusp of what they may do? I mean, or what he may have, what they should have.
You might as well.
Him?
We're right here. You might as well.
So, if Shane had have killed, I don't think Shane makes it another season.
So they would have had to have left the farm, and then they would have gone to the prison. Would have been the next stop. You don't think he makes it through the prison?
I don't think he makes it out the prison.
Interesting. From the governor or just internally?
You know, I think him and the governor go fisticuffs, or the governor does something and captures him and tortures the living crap out of him. I don't think the mom dies.
Okay, all right. So we changed that.
That happened.
Lori lives.
Lori lives.
Okay.
What's the blonde's name that dies?
Oh, Andrea.
Andrea. I don't think Andrea is the one that gets it. I think because obviously Andrea's character would probably bit it a lot earlier because
right.
You know, and you also have to if Shane kills, then he kind of puts Andrea in a very predicament because they had just gotten, you know, a little closer than
little chummy.
So there's some sort of like danger. Is Lori gonna become more dependent on Shane to the point where she may, you know, have some sort of like putting Andrea into a predicament if Andrea is kind of throwing shade because she feels like jilted, or does she just become a stone cold killer and she's like her and what's her face, the stone cold killer, Carol. Yeah, does she and Carol just go on like this like sociopath spree, because that's certainly possible.
But yeah, the video game gives you the chance to rebook all of that.
Dude, Andrea was tough. Like Andrea was after her sister died and she went through that. Man, she went tough. Now I didn't like how, you know, suicidal she was for a little bit. That was a little like, you know,
it got wonky there for a while.
Lip quivering is what I call it.
Lip quivering. Okay.
She was like, "You took that from me. I wanted to go out." I'm just like, "Oh, grow up." Like somebody did something nice for you. You know what? You can put a gun to your head at any time if you need to get it over. Stop lip quivering.
Could have hung out at the CDC when it went kablooey.
So you're too much of a coward to put a gun to your head, but you would just like to slip away into the night. Well, find you some pills. Like, this is in every freaking zombie game. There's always some pills somewhere. So they've shown people, you know, opting out, doing all that stuff in this show. And you've probably seen it. You've probably seen it as a character. Just stop lip quivering. Like, don't prattle on about that guy. He liked you as a person. He thought of you as a daughter. We don't know like the type of stuff they went through to get to where they were when we first meet them in outside of Atlanta. Right. So I just
now you're talking about Dale. They had the RV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Dale, it's like Dale did something nice for you. He cared about you. Don't get all mad and lip quivery about it. Like, what is there to forget? Like, she had an insufferable moment.
So it's interesting that when they killed him off the show, you never heard anything from him again. Not on the show, just like he had nothing to do with press. You know, they used to do the Talking Dead afterwards, where usually if a character were killed, they'd bring them on the show. He's one of a handful they killed off. Never heard another word out of him.
Yep.
Shane, John Bernthal. It's only been in the last year to 2 years. He started his own podcast, again, a little spicy. But he basically talked about how he was angry and wanted off the show. Lori as well. Sarah Wayne Callis, I think is her name. How angry they were after season 1 when that showrunner was kicked out. And they brought on another showrunner for season 2 at the farm. And why they basically homesteaded the farm because the budget got cut. The story got changed. The actors and actresses were not happy, and that's why you saw some of them move on maybe a little more quickly than they would have. It's really,
I did not realize.
It's really interesting, the backstory stuff. Even though that was a massive hit, it's had a lot of showrunning issues.
So I thought the first season was lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
I had just moved up to where I currently live. You know, first time in another place. In a state not too far from that state. There's a lot of that scenery in the state that I live in, and I was watching it. I bought the entire season on the Xbox 360.
Gotcha.
and they were the only place you could buy it. If you could not watch it on TV, this was the only way you could see it. So my episodes dropped at midnight on Sunday night, and I watched that, and the opening, just the music is captivating.
Yep.
And I watched it week to week, and one of the things that I think that I've been thinking about this. What is a horror movie? Because we are going into October soon.
That is true.
And what is a horror movie? And what I've come to put into my thoughts is that a horror movie is a slice of life that has gone utterly wrong. Whether you are a shark, 47 Below or something like that shark movie, or you're Freddy Krueger, a horror movie is there to paint a little bit of reality of this slice of life, to bring you into somebody's life for a very brief moment where they come up against some sort of terror. And I thought that The Walking Dead, above all shows that you would probably have to go back to the old zombie film and the old George Romero movies to actually get in the Italian horror movies, like Demon and Demons, where you get a slice of a truly believable, natural capturing of life on film. Now, you can have all the sets you want. We praise Star Wars for its sets. You praise Star Wars, but a lot of times those movies, they take you to a fantastical place.
Right.
Even if the desert of Tatooine is a real life desert, I don't consider that a slice of life. That they're putting you somewhere. But if you are on the ocean and you have scuba gear and you're in a shark cage and you're down that deep and you're in a trench, that is reality. That is a slice of life. Somebody had to go down into it. This is something that people do. It's crazy. Well, I don't understand how they do it, but they do this.
My former boss, that was his deal.
Yeah.
He wanted to go swimming with the sharks.
That's crazy.
He survived it, by the way, gratefully.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully. But that is a slice of life gone horribly wrong when something goes wrong. Freddy Krueger movies, they're telling you a teenage America. So they depict some form of ideal America,
right,
or Europe, or whether, and you can see this with a lot of the horror movies from Japan, where they will show you what it's like. They put the crickets in the background, so you believe it. It's a livable space, and then things just go wrong. Whether it's a ghost, a creature, and space alien, and when you have to like Hellraiser, for instance, that a divorce has happened. Somebody's living with some family. There's an uncle involved, and then the demons come out, the Cenobites come out, and wreak havoc. But it's centered on a very localized place that somebody lives.
Right. And
when we have to put other genres, people usually say it's a science fiction horror, or it's a thriller horror, because it actually isn't telling a slice of life, because they're trying to violate the rules of a horror movie. And I think that The Walking Dead has done something that no other television show has ever done, and that's actually made you believe that you were in the hot Georgia summer,
right,
waking up to zombies. Nobody has done that. Nobody, and even if that storyline isn't unique at all, that first season, no matter if they liked the story runners or whoever made those decisions to get rid of them, they did something no other show has ever done. No movie has really done since the 70s. And George Romero, when you watch that cheesy Dawn of the Dead, it's one of the greatest films of all time, because it made you feel like you were in a mall. Like, that is a place people go, and they made you feel like this is what would happen if these people actually got stuck there. And they take you on a character arc of, you know, closing it up, kind of getting the keys to the kingdom, cleaning it out, cleaning the zombies out to where they can go, whatever. And then they have, once all that energy is expended and they have everything that they would ever want, then the actual reality sets in that the human condition can't succeed in these circumstances.
Nope.
And the outside world, whether it's zombies or whether it's biker gangs, they will invade because they're going to tell you another part of human nature. There's the human nature of the zombies, where they're kind of tied to a location. That's the social commentary aspect of it. The zombies are, stand-ins for, materialism. And then you have the rebellious nature of mankind through the motorcycle gang that comes in and it takes it, and then they're like caught up into this, you can't take what I have, and blah blah blah. So I think that The Walking Dead did a really good job. Nothing has even come close, and I think that's why people loved the slice of life. A lot of times when you hear that, especially in today's media, you think of anime, like just these happy-go-lucky Japanese animations. A lot of the Studio Ghibli are trying to be, some sort of slice of life, and then some fantastical thing coming out of that. But if you look at Game of Thrones, that's a slice of life. They really make you believe you are there. They make you want to live there in some fashion. Like, this is a place for 1 hour a week that I can believe that I'm a part of this world. And things have gone horribly wrong at some point. But they're a political thriller. I think you have to have some sort of slice of life in that, which is, I think, is the kind of the foundation of most successful media.
I think so.
You start with, can somebody believe that people live here? And can I believe that they work within this space? Which is why I think the self-inserting and race swapping and gender swapping doesn't always work, because you have to make these basic goals of, can you bring the person to watch this show and believe everything that's going on? Because you have to have them suspend belief.
And that's the hook, isn't it?
It's the hook.
You might come for the first episode, or you might watch the movie, but if there's a second one, you're like, I don't need it. Or I'll watch it whenever it comes out, and you never end up doing it.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch Black Panther 2. I didn't like the first one that much. I've gone cold over it too, because I didn't hate it at the beginning. Right. I was like, there's a lot of good in this movie, but as Disney has kind of squeezed the lemon, I'm just like, I don't trust them. I don't trust to watch any more of their shows unless it's done by a reputable person like Gunn. Gunn tells a great story. You give him money to produce it, he's going to tell you a good story. It's not a Disney film. It's a James Gunn film.
And they are two different, very vastly.
Yeah. And Dave Filoni. It's not Disney Star Wars. It's Dave Filoni Star Wars. That is Lucasfilm at its best, or it's the best it's going to get.
I think that's it. It's the best it will get. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But I think there are limits to how good it can be based on the restrictions that are put on the people who do some of the best work.
Yep. So there's some wrestling news to get into.
Well, we talked AEW wrestling last week. We played the video game, Broken Ansible, delighted in bloodying me, front, back, sideways, throwing me into exploding barbed wire, if I remember correctly. I still bear the scars in my body, as the Apostle Paul would say. And so over the weekend, Phil Brooks, professionally known as CM Punk, was fired by All Elite Wrestling, AEW. He's featured prominently in the video game for an incident at All In at Wembley Stadium. They sold well over 80,000 tickets for this thing. They beat the SummerSlam record when it was British Bulldog and Bret Hart in the main event. They beat the WrestleMania record. Well, it lasted for 3 days. Then they outsold it for WrestleMania next year. But they had the record for 36 hours, 48 hours. apparently, and there's 14 different versions of the story going around, he was already in trouble for getting into a fight with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega about a year and a half ago. He had disappeared for a while. I thought they were going to fire him. They didn't. He bring him back. They gave him a Saturday night show, Collision. It's his show. The people that he's friendly with and that like him are on that show. And the show is far more professional wrestling centered, whereas AEW Dynamite is probably more WWE-like, more entertainment version. And apparently he got into an incident with Luke Perry's son, Jungle Boy Jack Perry. And as the story is told, again, one of many, they had to be separated, and he lunged apparently at the owner of the company, Tony Khan, son of Shad Khan, who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they had a disciplinary committee do an investigation. They discussed it with legal counsel. And at the advice of both, they terminated Phil Brooks' contract as of Saturday. Now, Broken Ansible, we've grew up in a time where wrestling was considered real a lot of the times, even though it's formulaic, it's scripted. I hate to say that, but, falling still hurt. You can say it's fake all you want, but why don't you go out there and fall and see how you feel? But, a lot of times growing up, we wouldn't know what was going on, and then years later read backstage stories of fights that took place, guns being pulled, all this kind of crazy stuff.
The alcohol they consume.
The alcohol consumed. The drugs, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the wrestler is still it's one of the, so it's kind of like that slice of life gone wrong type of things. It's almost a horror. It's definitely a train wreck.
I've never been able to make it through it.
Oh, I love that movie. I've only seen it once.
It hurts my stomach. I can't watch it.
It is, if people don't think that wrestling is real, watch The Wrestler. Mm-hmm. It may be sports entertainment. It may all be scripted.
Yeah.
But just remember that this is the people who wrestle today are standing on the shoulders of giants. The people from the 80s were standing on the shoulders of giants.
That's correct.
They're standing on the shoulders of men and women who went out and they wrestled and didn't get paid. They just did it because they had a dream that they were going to create a space for themselves. They're the entrepreneurs of entrepreneurs. When they had families at home that needed to be fed, and they were still out wrestling because they had a hope that they were going to hit it big. When the iron is hot, you strike, right?
That's what I hear.
They were doing something with wrestling at the time. So when people say, well, it's not real, well, they were throwing their bodies into disarray. They were having to cope with the reality of maybe not making ends meet. They were so when you get that type of travel, when you're having to pay for your own travel, or when they're paying for your travel and they have their own doctors, their doctors may be more suited and inclined to drug you up than to actually fix you up.
That's what happened with CM Punk in WWE before he was fired. He had the same issue.
Yeah, so and you can follow this thread all the way back to the 70s.
Oh, for sure.
You have just wrestlers who are bad people, like that one guy that has like the disease and he was having blood out there.
Oh, Abdul the Butcher.
Yeah, so you have people that don't even care. I mean, psychopaths. So that are also wrestling with you. That maybe you have to have a good relationship with these people, or they're just going to treat you as a stepping stone.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff that wrestling people don't understand, and I thought The Wrestler did a good job to at least give you a cross section of that reality, that you may be slicing meat in a deli and that's all you got, and then you're going out and you're breaking your knees, trying to compete, especially if you're aged out, so to speak. Yeah. And you don't have enough name recognition to actually coast like Ric Flair. Right? That man should not be wrestling. He shouldn't be anywhere near the ring. He should be enjoying his grandbabies. He should be, milking it. But man, that dude's got 80 wives. So I guess he needs to.
Daddy needs the money.
The child support.
He did his last match last year, and I refused to watch it.
Yeah.
Because I could have got the pay-per-view. I could have afforded the $29, and I'm like, I'm not going to watch someone die on my screen for real. In fact, they say, and I wasn't there and I didn't watch it, that he passed out for a while. I'm like, so you're wrestling a 70-year-old man who's bleeding. Okay, I don't need it.
Yeah.
That's not what I want my granddad. That's not, as the grandfather, I want my grandkids to see me. But setting that aside, Phil Brooks is an interesting cat. He's very much old school in everything that Broken Ansible just described. He is known to be a bit of a miserable individual who's never happy about anything. I think he had... What's that?
Is he a perfectionist, or is he just
I will not use the term, but he's...
Negative Nancy?
Very miserable in a lot of ways. He has his view, and if your view isn't his view, then your view is irrelevant, which... Got to be careful with that.
Oh, he's a modern person then.
What's that?
He's very modern in that thinking.
He's very modern in an old school way. It's a very weird dichotomy. But here's the thing. Whether he lunged at the boss or not, don't know. Whether he lunged at Jungle Boy, Jack Perry or not.
Well, you just don't do that.
I don't know. But in the day in which we live today, a lot of stuff years and years ago got washed. Or, I'm sorry, swept under the rug. Not washed under the rug. Years later, you find out about stuff, and it colors your view, but it's been so long, you're kind of like, oh, that's terrible, but you forget about it. In our 24-hour news cycle, websites, podcasts like this, and even much, much bigger ones, or TMZ's got their sports division. It was all over this. There's no hiding anything. And if you are considered to be in an unsafe work environment, then you start putting other people at risk. You put your company at risk.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they did the right thing. You fire them on the spot. I mean, you don't even get with your legal department. Nobody gets that type of treatment in the real world.
They've been over backwards multiple times.
So I get that he's he's the golden goose. He's kind of the face of modern wrestling.
Spiked the ratings, being paid well over $1 million a year.
And, rising tides raise all ships.
So they say.
He's something of a phenom wrestler. A lot of people like him. I'm indifferent on him.
And there's a lot of people that have grown to be indifferent from his attitude as well.
Yeah. I mean, he was, when I first met him, everybody called him the straight edge, and I didn't know why. Like, he's just like, this guy's one of those, he's not going to drink, he's not going to do drugs, he's got this, like, I don't need any of this, I'm awesome as it. I came out of the box this way, and it saddens me that you'd have somebody that's just causing havoc behind the scenes when everybody is here to make money through making other people happy. How have we gotten to a point in society, and this is Disney, you need to be listening to this too, all your job is to do is to make people smile. Now, you can tell sad stories, you can make people cry too. I mean, everybody needs a good cry every now and then.
True.
But you don't need to cause anxiety in people. You can cause a certain type of anxiety week to week, but you need to hold your audience captive for that anxiety, or you're going to spiral out of control. And when CM Punk does something stupid, if that is truly the case, where he's just being a crotchety SOB behind the scenes, he deserves to get fired.
So if I walk into my business tomorrow, which I'll be in the office tomorrow, and a rare occurrence for me, and I go around and I make people feel uncomfortable, or I'm acting in a threatening manner, if I get fired, it's not on the people that I was menacing. It's not everybody else. It's me, and this wouldn't be tolerated in any other environment. So it kind of cracks me up a little bit that people are trying to make excuses on either side. I'm like, this is not professional behavior, regardless of the profession you've chosen.
Yeah.
You just can't.
I don't know enough about this story.
Mm-hmm.
If all he was doing was saying things that made people uncomfortable.
Apparently, one of the wrestlers went out to the ring, cut a promo, and referenced him in a negative way, which I always thought was the idea. Make the people want to see the good guy kill you in the ring.
Huh.
And apparently he goes back and he's like, you got a problem with me? He's like, I don't have a problem. I was just trying to get the crowd riled up. And it just kind of went from there. Back in the day, the whole point was to get butts in the seats. The more butts in the seats, the more money you made. But somewhere along the way, everything is personal.
Well, wrestling has done that to himself.
Interesting point.
So I will not give any wiggle room to the wrestling businesses. Now, even if AEW is the best that we have, the wrestlers have gone through a litany of, they are the Russia of our entertainment industry. And I say that Russia has gone through so many political revisions in the last 200 years. The people of Russia have had to change the way they've lived so many different times. And to the point where you have, they will settle on people who can just provide.
Right.
And I think wrestling is in that, the AEW certainly fills that gap, because WWE is certainly trash. So as a company, they can't get it right. They can't win for winning. They can't.
Oh, they make money.
They make money. Yeah, good. But they could have 10 times more money. They could have my money, but they won't get it.
That's okay. That's a good point.
So why? Well, these wrestlers have gone through the WCW, the NWA, the WWF, the WWE, the ECW, the Japanese, the Europeans, the Mexican people have gone to Mexico and worked for them. They have gone through every sort of political landscape within that division, on how they have to market themselves, how they have to treat themselves as the most important thing, that they have to think themselves more highly than they should. They have to do this to protect their own livelihood, because God forbid these companies that make millions of dollars off of them don't protect them themselves. How could you go against a wrestler from being a gamer and going on Twitch and having his own brand? That's a boon to you. That's a boon to Twitch. There's so many brand opportunities that is there, but because we're the WWE, we're not going to let you do that. Blah 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 blah. I don't care for you anymore, WWE. Just FYI.
And it's a number of performers that were in that condition. Now you had some that went completely off the other side and opened sites that I won't reference, but they are typically geared to girls, and they are girls, and pictures and videos and things. I mean, you've had people who have dabbled in all different types of things. They've been told no, and a lot of them left to go pursue it, and some of them are doing extremely well in those things. I can see being a company saying there are limits to what we let you do because you represent our company, but streaming a video game, and there were some wrestlers reporting they were making upwards of $1 million a month just by playing video games on Twitch on their off time, not when they're supposed to be at the arena getting ready, but they're home, they're streaming, they're engaging with their fans, which I would think you would want.
It's free advertisement. Mm-hmm. It is baffling that WWE did not. So there are plenty of streamers that are political streamers, that like Hassan Piker, and you have the Asmongold is a video game, variety show. You have people that played nothing but gacha games. Mm-hmm. Pokemon nuzlocking, which is a word that I just learned like last week. It's like when you play a Pokemon game, and when a Pokemon dies, you don't revive it; it's just done. And you play on like the hardest settings and stuff like that. So I mean, those are some hardcore people, and they have a Twitch audience. There's painters on there. There's so many different people, and now there's multiple. YouTube is doing streaming for video games and all that variety show stuff. Then there's the Kick, that's more into like the more adult-centered content, like gambling and stuff like that. And they do video games now too. Matter of fact, they're pulling people from Twitch by hundreds of the millions of dollars, giving people $100 million contracts. That's crazy, right? Where is the WWE? Where is it? They have a video game that they literally get made every freaking year. How is that not one of the #1 streamed games on any of those platforms? And they have gamers that actually are pro wrestlers. And when there's downtime, when there's a wrestler out with a sprained ankle, there's a wrestler out with knee conditions, back injuries, how are you not making money? How are you not winning? How are you not winning? You don't like money? You are Disney. You are going to do everything in your power to not make money despite yourselves. Because these wrestlers have gone through crap to get where they are. They've done hard work. You treat them like garbage. And they get to the point where they have to smell their own, what they're cooking. And then they make it uncomfortable for everybody else. And they know that they may be the prima donna. But you know what? They're not wrong.
Right.
Because they've had to win to get where they are. They've been winning. They're making you win. And then they get too big to fail, so they make it bad for everybody else. And then they have to be, then we have the reality of the situation. Nobody gets to do that for free. And you got to pay the price. You got to pay the price of being a jerk. And if he was truly a jerk, he deserves to get fired.
Right.
Like, not even like unconditionally. However, to be honest, it's not necessarily a situation that is 100% one he made. And I think wrestling has a price to pay for that, and a lot of decisions. AEW isn't going to get a free hook. They're living off the back of the WWE, what they built, and what the NWA built, what the WCW built. All the different independent wrestling groups that formed up, got made, and then solidified. All those wrestlers that have all those blood, sweat, and tears put forth. Those are the people that never got to make it. And now that they've got people made, like CM Punk, those people are now taking it for granted, possibly, and putting their other people into positions because they think that they are. And maybe he's right. Maybe that's the reason why he makes money and nobody else is. Somebody like that guy who called him out, he's that entrepreneur spirit in that, and CM Punk's just like, nah, we don't need that. And maybe it's true.
Maybe.
But you don't get to say that. Let the fans decide.
See, that's the thing, really. And I love a good backstage story as much as the next guy. I love that stuff. But the reality is we're here in 2023.
I need backstage stories, not front page stories.
That's correct.
And that's the problem.
Well, I can't sum it up better than that. I think that's it. At the end of the day, there's got to be somebody in charge.
Yep.
And the buck stops with somebody, and it did in this case.
Yep.
I'm sure he did the 2 steps because he doesn't want to be sued. I mean, who does? And he still may be sued. Who knows? Breach of contract. There's all kinds of legal things that people can't.
Well, if he hit somebody, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's probably some.
Well, he didn't hit him. He lunged at him as if he were going to strike him, which is still...
That's assault. I mean, you don't have to hit somebody to be brought up on assault charges.
Nope.
I mean, you could just yell at somebody pretty good.
Assault is the danger. The battery is when you actually strike the individual.
Exactly. And assault is typically a part of, workplace violations.
And I guess to kind of sum all this up is, even in a wrestling environment, which is very masculine and feminine, because they have some tremendous lady wrestlers in AEW that I'm not getting crossways with, because Jade Cargill would hurt me and hurt me and hurt me again, and I would have no fight because she's an amazing physical specimen. There's so much chargedness in the atmosphere in a lot of these environments, same as you get in football, baseball, basketball, and all the sports as well. Behavior, there are standards. Regardless of how charged a situation is, there's still rights, there's still wrongs. And you know what? Intrinsically, we as humans know.
Yep.
We know. You know,
cross the line.
Kids know from a very young age what is good, what is not. That's why when they want to sneak a cookie, they sneak a cookie. If they knew they shouldn't do it, or if they knew it was okay, they would just get the cookie and eat it in front of you. Why are they sneaking it? You gotta respect
the hustle when somebody does that.
Well, that's true. But they know I gotta sneak it because I'm not supposed to. We know intrinsically at young ages what is okay, what is not. When you're in your 40s, mid 40s, come on, man. You have to know how to behave in the workplace. Like the workplace or not, like the coworkers or not, as Broken Ansible said, a rising tide raises all ships. If that's really your attitude and tone, you want to find a way to work with people, or just say, I can't do this anymore when my contract's up.
You got to let people fail in life. Everybody needs a good redemption arc. You got to let people cross a line, but you don't have to let people cross the line.
Exactly. There has to be a line.
There has to be a line, and it has to be for everybody, or it has to be for nobody. And if CM Punk crossed the line, then you know what? Mess around and find out. But that being said, I hope it's not true. I hope this is just a bunch of conjecture. But I mean, if it is true, I don't have any. It is what it is.
It makes for interesting banter online, and so everybody is tribal. You have your WWE fans, your AEW fans, and that's the only thing that's any good. And then within those groups, some like certain performers, some don't like the others. It's tribal in that way as well. At some point, Ansible, as a society, we have to step back from our tribalism and say, look, we have right, we have wrong. This is the way it is, as you said, for everybody. It's not just we're picking on one person. If I do it, I'm just as liable as if you do something. For whatever reason, we struggled with that societally.
Yep.
We don't want that to apply to everybody, because then all of a sudden that might mean we have a standard we have to keep, we have to uphold.
And the problem with it applying to the fandom is that the CM Punk fans are going to go to bat for him.
And they are.
And it's one thing to say he was wrong, right?
Right.
And people are taking this out of context, and that certainly may be the case, and maybe I owe an apology, but I don't think I've really said that he's a bad dude.
No.
If he did what he did, he deserves to be fired 100%. He needs to be the example that everybody else will follow, and every other person that follows needs to be fired along if they cross that line. If he didn't cross the line, if he has a true gripe, then it needs to be litigated, and he needs to get every ounce of cash that he needs to get, because there is not just one side to this.
Exactly.
He had to have his personality has been formed. His offstage personality has been forged, informed by how the industry has treated him and his coworkers.
That is true.
And nobody gets a lunch for free.
Nope.
And the wrestling industry is a terrible, terrible, terrible industry to be in. Nobody should do it. However, if that's what you're doing, more power to you. Be the best wrestler you could be, and let the tides rise, and enjoy what enjoyment that you can make for other people. Other people are gonna, they're probably not gonna appreciate you as much.
Right.
And that's just where our society is. But I do believe that the people who have forged out an industry, it's still very raw. Mm-hmm. No pun intended.
I see what you did there. Wow.
It's still fledgling, and it's an interesting thing that 40 years later, we still have a very molten core of a wrestling industry. After it's solidified and fractured and been tempered, and you thought, the WWE was the last aspect of it, then you get another avatar being raised in the AEW, because there is a fandom people love, and it's multifaceted. It's got things that you can do, enjoyment. There's arcs. There's the old comic book villain stuff.
Right.
There's the ladies that put on great shows. Like Bayley put on one of the best wrestling shows I've ever seen in person. Right. You have the Mexican wrestlers, the luchadors, that are absolutely amazing. You have the Japanese people that, man, I tell you what, their theatrics is unrivaled.
Their strong style. I mean, they will just chop the what out of you.
Oh, and those people will put bruises on you.
Oh, yes,
they will test your kneecaps. There are people that will probably not walk when they're 70s that are wrestling.
Look at the Great Muta. His knees are shot from doing the moonsault and landing on his knees every single time.
Yep.
He can barely get around.
Yeah. There are a lot of costs to these people's lives that bring us happiness.
Yes.
Every week, or every 2 weeks, or twice a week, whatever the cadence, or if you're the super fan and you watch all the systems that come out, all the wrestling shows. That's great, but man, these people probably don't get paid enough to do it. They probably go through more hassle and contract negotiation than they should ever have to. They're treated like cattle. They're not given the autonomy of the brand. It's mind-boggling how the wrestling industry still feels like it hasn't settled on its final form. And so I understand society changes. like the Coliseum days may be over. It may need to have that community driven thing again, where people are traveling to small locations and filling and just getting accuracy by volume. Just have 100 shows and average it out, right?
It's an average.
It's an average.
Okay. All right.
So you may need to do that. There's a lot of spaces where they can play video games. Mm-hmm. There are people. I think Mr. Beast is one. These people they get money just so they can give it away.
Right.
They put churches to shame. They put 503Cs to shame, where they go out, they'll give out $5,000 to just random people on the street. Where did they get that money? From people who want to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And how wrestling hasn't tapped into that. It's the most ingrained system of entertainment that can come to your front door in a blink of an eye. From the craziest local wrestling to the most extravagant international system. It's the one that you can actually go to. Right. You may never go to a football game, an NFL game. You may never go to an NHL game. Mm-hmm. You may not be anywhere near a Coliseum or some big event, and it may cost you more money than you really have.
It's true.
To see it. I mean, seats at NHL, the last time I saw it, NHL was like $75 for a nosebleed. I couldn't imagine what it is now. And it would take me 3 hours to get there.
Right.
It would take me whatever the seats are, the beverages, the parking, the gasoline. Yep. I mean, it would be a $300-400 event when, if you're just on the road to wherever that wrestling is going to be, you may just be able to go 15 minutes down the road and be there. I was at a GameStop in a northern Coleman, Alabama. I just decided to drive up there to go to a GameStop. They had a game I wanted. They didn't have it locally. It took me 45 minutes to get there. On their front door, they had a local wrestling thing, and I believe I had mentioned it to you, and you're like, oh yeah, that was going someplace, blah, blah, blah. And you actually knew about this no-name wrestling.
I have no life.
And I was just like, I could go to that. But I think I had missed it by 2 weeks.
I think you did, yeah.
And it was still on the door, and I told you about it, and it was like, man, they're still doing this. They're still hustling and bustling, and it wasn't big name stuff. These were people that are putting on their own makeup.
Yeah, AEW. That's one thing they do is they pull a lot from the independents. From the WWE perspective, they're trying to get you into their NXT program, which has really just become truly a training ground, which is fine, but it's to learn the WWE way. Whereas on the independent circuits, you may learn good habits, bad habits, no habits, and
that guy that puts his hands in his pockets, that guy still.
Oh, you love some Orange Cassidy. By the way, lost his championship last night.
Yeah,
he lost it to John Moxley. Yep, pockets, as Jim Cornette calls him.
Yeah, if you're not going to take your hands out and respect the hustle.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Just
that is one guy that I just can't take serious. He cracks me up because he reminds me of like a video game character that would be in like Streets of Rage or Final Fight.
Yes, exactly.
This is a character that would be doing that in those games, and the fact that he does that and he's actually somewhat good.
Yep.
And like he puts on a show, that's crazy.
And that's where you see a lot of the older fans and older personalities hate him with a passion because of the hands in the pockets and the little kip up and the rolling while still keeping hands in pockets and all. And I get it. He is every millennial slouch who can actually go in the ring and perform. He just chooses not to because he doesn't want to until he has to. But he doesn't really want to. I get it.
But, for me, that guy, I'm not one to sit there and call out the millennials, and I don't really care about them.
Get off my porch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm borderline a millennial, I guess, by a couple years. But one thing I appreciate about my stance in the wrestling world is I've been out of it so long that I don't have to sit here and judge these characters the first time I see them.
Right.
because I'm not living with these characters week to week. I'm not I'm not having any anxiety with any of the drama going
That's
through.
a great point there.
So I just see the guy as a video game character.
So what you're saying is being outside the bubble is actually healthier for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I can appreciate his style. He's crazy. Like it's like he should be in a 1989 Sega Genesis video game. He should be a character in a game up on that wall right there. That guy is something that would have been in a Capcom beat 'em up, or Taito beat 'em up, or just a straight up Sega beat 'em up.
Now you said it'd be a Genesis game.
Yeah, Sega.
Is that because Genesis does what Nintendo don't?
Um,
I'm bringing it. It's all coming back to you.
So Sega did have the wish to be the hardware of the arcade at home. Nintendo never did. Nintendo does not care about that. They wanted to bring smiles and experiences that they wanted to bring.
Then why did they make Duck Hunt?
Duck Hunt's
I'm still scarred. No, all dogs do not go to heaven. That dog did not go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
So, I think that Sega has a place, and plus their hardware was actually very close to arcade hardware, like the Midway hardware,
right?
The old Midway games and stuff like that. They had the same CPUs and all that stuff, so people made more arcade-centric games, and a lot of beat-em-ups came from that. Nintendo had good hardware, and Super Nintendo was great, but they had to play catch-up with their beat-em-ups. They did get Street Fighter 2 first, but Final Fight was not the greatest port. It slowed down a lot, where Streets of Rage was just like, man, they just kept on cranking those out.
What's your take on Ninja Gaiden 3?
The best one? The one that it's harder, but it's less cheaty. So, I mean, it was okay. I didn't get to play it too much. By the time it was available to rent, it was always out, and I think I moved on to the Super Nintendo.
For those who don't understand, there was a time where you couldn't just go buy it off the shelf because we were poor children. You had to go rent it from the video store.
Yep.
And you had to hope it was actually in stock so you could rent it. Otherwise, you're stuck renting.
And you had to get it on Saturday or Friday night because your rental was only maybe a day and a half or 2 days.
That's correct. Depending on when you rented it.
Yep, depending on when you rented it. So I would do Friday night or Saturday morning. And by the time the 90s came around, we were going to Farmore, and we were part of the coupon plan. So we got 5 a week. And it could be video games or movies. And sometimes I did 5 movies. I have watched more 80s like horror movies and movies from like Europe than anybody I've ever met.
You like Critters, don't you?
I am a huge Critters
fan. Oh my goodness.
Critters 1, 2, 3, Critter 4. I'd love them to make a new Critters movie. I just don't trust anybody to do it because people, maybe these Australian folks, with this other movie that we were going to talk about real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Operation Rainfall. It's really good. I liked it.
He's directing to the point.
Yeah.
Now, you said this was not...
Oh, I'm sorry. Occupation Rainfall.
Occupation
Rainfall. So I thought it was the first movie, and it's not. Occupation's the first movie. It's an Australian movie, and they have a very interesting take on cinema. At least their science fiction stuff. I've watched an old movie that I have from the mid-2000s where it was a alien invasion. These 2 brothers, and maybe even the same people. I have to take a look. But they made this crazy good movie that is way better than it deserves to be. They made it on their MacBook.
Nice.
Or their Mac Pro. And they used Final Cut. They used, just what you could buy at Best Buy to make their movie. And their camera was good. And they made it. They did it. They used After Effects to make and it looked like a great movie. Like, it was good. And it follows that. This movie starts off really, it's just nonstop action, and it felt a little off that it was like, man, is this really good? I mean, I do realize that Australian movies do like to punch above their weight in that regard, but it was really, really fast paced. I mean, you get swept up into a war and it's a space alien invasion movie. Really good lighting. It looks like a video game almost, like you could be playing a video game with this. It's got decent story arcs. It pulls from Enemy Mine. It pulls from War of the Worlds. It pulls from there's a couple movies that came out around 2010. It pulls from Independence Day. It pulls from a lot of stuff, but it does have its own. The guy that does Boba Fett's in it.
Tamora Morrison.
Yep, he's in it. Does a fantastic job. The guy, the Asian comedian that always is in the Hangover movies. He's in it.
He was a doctor.
Yeah.
Ken Wong? Ken Jeong?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So he's in it.
Big fan.
Yep. So it was pretty cool. Now I did find out today that was the second movie.
Dang it!
Even though there's the Occupation Rainfall 2. And they're making a part 3, but there is an occupation that's actually the people from the middle part of this movie. That's their movie. So you meet the people from the first movie in this movie. So it kind of plays like a video game. It kind of plays like The Last of Us, in terms of its storytelling.
That's a crazy way of doing it. Having the sequel be in 3 parts, 1, 2, and 3, and then
it ends on a
you
cliffhanger.
didn't term the first movie 1, so now you've messed up Broken Ansible.
Yeah, you messed me up.
All right, so we're gonna give you on the 1 to 5 scale watchability 1 to 5.
2.75.
Okay, so not quite halfway there.
Well, it's over halfway.
What's that?
Yeah, it's over halfway.
Well, hang on.
2.75.
It's an average. See, I can't do math.
It's above average.
Okay. Well, that's my hope. Be above average.
I would suggest you watch the first one.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna try and find it on Netflix if I can. If I'm wanting to go watch the first movie,
it must have been worth something.
Yeah, and it is a direct sequel.
Okay.
It's a direct sequel. It was at Sundance. I think it won Sundance or maybe.
Okay, so it's a pretty well funded film.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the special effects are great. Actually, the special effects are great. The acting at times is sus, but it knows what it is. So the acting is it's not bad. It's just, this movie is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It's not trying to be anything else. It's not trying to, it knows exactly the aim that it's shooting for. And how can you get mad with that? It's not like these Disney movies that are trying to redefine cinema. It's like, I don't need you to.
So this has its own little occupation. It occupies its own space.
Yeah, it's occupying Hollywood.
I'm on a roll today.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so Occupation, check it out. Start with Occupation 1, then look for Occupation Rainfall 1, Rainfall 2, Rainfall 3.
I think it's Rainfall.
Are the recommendations. Broken Ansible is looking it up here as we speak. Hopefully he'll get it up here as we're winding down the program. Well, we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to us, to hear our ramblings. We went a little long this week, but we hadn't been able to get together much this week due to work schedules, and so we had to get a bunch of stuff to get off of our chest. We appreciate you listening. Please do us a favor. Like this video. Click subscribe if you've not done so. And if you enjoy what you heard, share it out on your chosen social media. If you don't like what you heard, still share it out on social media. That's okay. We're here for everybody. So on behalf of Broken Ansible, I am still your humble host, the Lord Cephas. This has been Midnight Magic Musings, episode 29. We'll see you back next week for episode 30. So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.